A down-on-her-luck woman tries to end her own life, but a lonely tow truck driver rescues her. However, instead of taking the woman to a hospital, he keeps her captive, convinced that she's his long-lost wife. One night, Liz enters a supermarket to return the cans of dog food she'd purchased earlier. The cashier says she can't return the items unless there's something wrong with them, so the woman dents the cans by pounding them on the counter. The noise catches Aiden's attention, and he curiously watches Liz. Later, in an empty parking lot, the woman gathers bloody papers from the passenger seat of her car and throws them outside. Then she washes her hands with boxed wine. Meanwhile, Aiden sits inside his tow truck nearby and takes Polaroid pictures of his open mouth. Moments later, Liz turns her engine on after attaching a hose from her exhaust pipe that leads into the vehicle. As the car fills with white smoke, the woman sits with her eyes closed in the front seat. Suddenly, the man drives his truck toward the car, opens the door, and drags her unconscious body out of the vehicle. However, instead of taking her to the hospital to get medical attention, Aiden drives back to his home with Liz's car on the bed of his truck. As he carries her into the house, she hits her head on the door, so he takes her to the kitchen where he tends to the injury. Then the man lays her down on his bed, ties her hand to the headboard, and makes her take a sleeping pill. Later that night, as Aiden lies next to Liz, he tries touching her hair, but he imagines another woman turning around and discouraging him from touching her. The next day, the man rambles nonsensical phrases while preparing scrambled eggs in the kitchen. He takes the breakfast spread to the bedroom, but Liz says she's a vegan. Aiden takes the woman to the bathroom and orders her to step into the shower to wash up. Suddenly, he mentions that he smells smoke and asks her if she does too. When she says no, he tells her to stay in the bathroom while he checks where the smell's coming from. While he's gone, Liz checks the medicine cabinet. When he returns, he asks her what she's doing, and she says she was just looking for plaster to patch up her wound. The woman asks him who he is and where she is. She says she wants to go home because her father Louis is looking for her. However, the man says he's tired of the woman constantly belittling him, confusing Liz. Later, while she eats breakfast in bed, Aiden says he always knew that she'd come back. However, when he calls her Helen, Liz asks him who Helen is, which angers the man. He berates the woman for leaving him home alone to starve. Calmly, she explains that she doesn't remember anything and that she can't think straight. Aiden says that he found her in the city after she went missing weeks ago. Liz tries to explain that she isn't Helen and that she doesn't know who he is. She adds that he might have mistaken her for his wife because they look alike, but the man insists that she's Helen. To appease the unhinged man, Liz plays along and accepts that she's his wife. Minutes later, he takes her to the living room where he shows her the pictures of his open mouth. Liz asks him to take her on a tour of the house and if he can untie her. However, he refuses, explaining that the rope on her wrist is for her own protection. Eventually, Aiden watches the woman as she prepares food on the kitchen table. To get him out of the house, Liz asks if he has to go to work. When he shakes his head, she says he needs to because they've got bills to pay. So the man asks if she'll be okay by herself in the house, and she affirms. After she hears him drive off, Liz tries the back door, but it's locked. She sees a phone, but it doesn't work. Then she heads out the front door carrying a wooden mallet for protection. However, when she's about to turn the corner, two Rottweilers aggressively chase her, and she runs back inside the house. The day before, Liz woke up from the baby's cries, and her sister Jackie asked her to feed the infant. Liz argued that she can't feed her sister's baby because she has to prepare for a job interview. Later, while Jackie's redhead boyfriend Dan was asleep, the woman stole her sister's necklace from the vanity. As she left for work, their dog Louis managed to escape from the apartment and followed her outside. Unfortunately, Liz accidentally ran over the dog as she backed out of her parking spot. She placed the injured Louis on the papers in the passenger seat and drove him to the vet. The veterinarian informed her that the surgery to save the dog's life could cost $700, so Liz went to a pawn shop to sell the necklace. When the man offered $450, she said she needed more. The man suggested that she sleep with him for more money, but she refused his advances. While the man walked away to get the money, Liz stole a watch from his display, which he then sold back to him for an additional $150. Unfortunately, when she returned to the vet, they informed her that Louis passed away while she was gone. That night, Jackie and Dan asked Liz if she's seen the necklace, but the woman feigned ignorance. After she headed to the bathroom, Jackie expressed how she'd had enough of her sister and that she wants her out of their apartment. Dan tried to reason with her, but the woman pointed out that she's seen how her boyfriend looks at Liz. Then Jackie opened her sister's bag and found the money. She confronted Liz, who had no choice but to admit that she pawned the necklace to pay for Louis' surgery. When they asked where the dog was, she said that she accidentally ran him over and that he's dead. Furious, Jackie berated her sister for allowing Louis to perish, despite knowing full well that the animal was the only thing they had left of their brother Mikey. She reminded Liz that it was her negligence that led to their brother's demise, and blamed her for everything that went wrong in their family. To calm her down, Dan asked his girlfriend to take their baby to the park while he spoke to Liz. Later on the rooftop, Liz remembered Mikey falling off the ledge when he pretended he could fly. Eventually, Dan joined her and explained that she needs to leave. When she asked where she's supposed to go, he said that she's been living with them for 6 months and that they were always good to her. Liz leaned into the man and flirtily acknowledged that he was especially good to her. He backed away from the woman and reminded her that he loves her sister. As she prepared to leave, Liz tore the picture on the fridge and only kept the half with her, Mikey, and Louis in it. In the present, the woman finds a raw whole chicken in the fridge. That evening, Aiden returns home and Liz serves him undercooked chicken. After taking one bite, the man stands back up to retrieve the flowers he forgot in the truck. He hands the woman the bouquet and she thanks him. That night, after they both take separate showers, Aiden guides Liz back to bed where he initiates lovemaking. However, she refuses and pushes him away. When he continues to lay on top of her, she screams that he's hurting the baby. The man stops and asks if the child is his, and she says yes. The next morning, the man throws up outside the house before grabbing one of the dog's shock collars. Later, when Liz wakes up, she realizes he locked the device onto her neck. Suddenly, the man says he's paralyzed and can't feel his legs. He thinks the uncooked chicken she served last night poisoned him. So after he drags himself to the bathroom, she tells him to soak his feet in the warm water to keep gangrene from setting in. She asks for her car keys back so she can get help, but Aiden says he threw her car in the river. Liz leaves him in the bathroom to search for his keys in his vest pocket so she can finally escape. To her surprise, the man walks into the kitchen walking perfectly fine, revealing that the paralysis was just another quirk to his odd behavior. Still, she tends to his feet and tells him to take better care of himself. Later, the woman finds pills in the medicine cabinet and thinks she can use them to incapacitate her captor. Then she heads outside and encourages the man to take them so he doesn't get sick again. However, he only takes one despite Liz telling him to take 4. The next morning after Aiden leaves, the woman places crushed sleeping medication in ground meat and offers it to the dogs. However, the animals don't take the bait, so she prepares pancake batter, climbs up the chimney, and uses the batter to write a help sign on the roof. After she washes up, she watches a videotape of Helen berating Aiden for constantly recording her. She tells him that she only tolerates being around him because he can't take care of himself. At the end of the video, Liz hears Helen tell a sleeping Aiden that she's decided to leave him because she no longer loves him. When the man returns home, she notices that he seems despondent. He says that nobody loves him and mentions that what she sees isn't always the real him. He implies that his wife and parents don't love him, so she assures Aiden that his dogs adore him. Eventually, Liz shares that her brother Mikey was also a special person who most people thought was odd, but had a gift for numbers. Still convinced that she's Helen, Aiden asks her why she never mentioned her brother before. So she says that her brother died before they got married. The woman cries as she recounts the story, and the man comforts her. That evening, the rain erases the help sign from the roof, causing white streaks to appear outside the bedroom window. Thinking the white streaks are snow, the man wraps himself up in winter clothes and hides in the bathtub. Later, he brings in a basin for Liz to urinate in, then takes it outside to dump the contents. While he's outside, the woman takes out a knife she's kept hidden and tries to cut her rope. However, she accidentally cuts her arm, and when she sees the blood, uses it to her advantage by telling the man that she's losing the baby. She screams at him to get a doctor or they could lose the child. So the man drives to Dr. Holden's house and begs him for help. In the truck, the doctor asks Aiden if he's been taking his medication every day, and the man nods. When they get to the house, Dr. Holden realizes the woman in the room isn't Helen, so he asks Aiden to step out so he and the patient can have privacy. Reluctantly, the man leaves, and the doctor asks Liz what her name is. When she says Liz, the older man says he'll refer to her as Helen as long as Aiden is around. He says he'll convince the captor that she has a blockage and needs to be brought to the hospital. When the unhinged man returns, Dr. Holden explains the situation and says that his wife needs to go to a hospital because she requires surgery. However, the man refuses and he and the doctor fight over a syringe. Due to the struggle, the older man suffers a heart attack and collapses lifelessly onto the bed. Liz screams at Aiden to do something, so he drags Dr. Holden's body out onto the yard. Then he puts on a robe and washes his hands thoroughly in the bathroom sink. When he returns to the bedroom carrying a vacuum cleaner, Liz asks him where the doctor is. Instead of answering her question, he turns the vacuum on and says he needs to remove the blockage because the implant inside her is controlling her mind. As the man tries to use the device on her body, Liz fights him off and manages to choke him out using the rope on her wrists. After he loses consciousness, she ties him up. Then she heads to the kitchen to grab a knife and a towel to wrap around her arm. She heads out of the house, and when one of the dogs attacks her, she slashes its throat, ending its life. Liz runs to the truck, but she gets stuck when she backs the vehicle into the house, and the woman cries defeatedly. The next morning, she rips the telephone lines from the walls and uses them to tie Aiden's forelimbs on the bedposts. Then she uses a knife to cut and remove all his clothes. When he wakes up, he calls her Helen, so she finally says that her name is Liz. Aiden mentions that his head hurts, angering the woman who hits him and screams at him for the many days he's kept her captive. Later that day, Liz manages to remove the shock collar using a chisel and a mallet. Then she finds Helen's clothes in a box and puts them on. After dinner, she places her leftovers in a bowl, mixes Aiden's medication into the food, and feeds it to him. The next day, she befriends the remaining dog and they take a stroll. Later, the woman digs up a grave pit in the yard. When she returns to the bedroom, a noticeably lucid Aiden asks her where Helen is and if Liz is a nurse in a hospital. Moments later, she feeds him his meal and he asks if he hurt her. When she doesn't answer, he apologizes and wonders how long he's been away. Liz asks him how long it's been since he last took his medication, and he says he doesn't remember but theorizes it could have been when Helen left. He says he only remembers bits and pieces from the last few days, like how she received flowers. Then Liz takes him to the bathroom where she cuts and shaves his beard. After his shower, the woman stares at his face and remarks that he's younger than she thought. He asks her if he did anything bad, and she says no. He explains that if he did do anything bad, he promises that he never meant to do so. So Liz tells him that while he wasn't on medication, he killed one of his dogs, even though she was the one who did it. Later, while the woman brushes the horse, Aiden shares that Helen cared for the horse more than she did about him. He sometimes thought that his wife wanted him institutionalized just so she could keep the house and the horse. Then he asks if she was trying to end her life in the car when he found her, and she says she was just intoxicated. That evening, the pair dances around in the living room. That night, Liz gives Aiden medication to help him sleep. Before he closes his eyes, he asks that she stay beside him, so the woman caresses his hair. Minutes later, she places her and Mikey's picture on the fridge. Eventually, she continues digging the pit, then tosses Dr. Holden's corpse inside. Suddenly, a car arrives and she realizes that it's Helen. Liz approaches the woman and introduces herself as Aiden's friend. They enter the house, and when Helen sees her husband tied up on the couch, she apologizes to the sleeping man profusely. She tries to remove the ropes, but Liz stops her. Helen admonishes her for restraining the man, explaining that it's not ideal for someone with his condition. Liz argues that she was the one who took care of the man after Helen left him. The wife says that he doesn't need to be tied up because he's more likely to hurt himself than others. However, Liz lies and says that Aiden killed the dog. Then she takes the woman to the pit and shows her Dr. Holden's body. Alarmed, Helen asks her what happened, and she says the older man had a heart attack. When the wife tries calling the authorities, Liz says she's only doing so to institutionalize Aiden. She believes Helen left her husband on purpose so she'll end up with the house. The wife scoffs at her accusation and tries calling the police again, but Liz bashes her head with a flashlight and rolls her body into the pit. Eventually, she tosses the dog's carcass into the same hole and proceeds to fill it in. The next day, Aiden mentions that he heard Helen's voice while he was asleep, but Liz waves it off as a dream. Later, the man spots his wife's car outside, so the woman lies and says it's been there as long as she has. She says he needs needs to forget about his wife and suggests they get rid of the car for good. As they ride in the tow truck with Helen's car on the bed, Aiden admits he actually sold Liz's car for scraps. Moments later, a police officer flags them down by the side of the road. The cop asks them if they've seen Dr. Holden recently, and they say they haven't. When the cop notices the confused look on Aiden's face, Liz says Dr. Holden was their family doctor and introduces herself as Helen. The cop asks for the man's license and he steps away. Aiden says he remembers that the doctor was at the house, but Liz says he's just confused. The officer returns and says the man's towing license is expired, so he can't carry vehicles at the moment. Quick on her feet, Liz explains that they're just taking her car into town to get it fixed, so they're towing it for private use. The cop asks to see her ID, so she heads to the car and grabs Helen's wallet. Aware that she doesn't look like the woman, she lies and says all she has is her credit card, which the cop accepts. When the officer returns her card, he sees the concerned look on Aiden's face and asks if he's alright. So Liz lies and says her husband's upset because there's been a death in the family. Eventually, the cop sends them on their way. Several days later, Liz joins Aiden while he's fixing up the bathroom. After giving him a playful nudge, they make love on the floor. Weeks later, a noticeably pregnant Liz brushes the horse outside the house. Suddenly, two police detectives arrive looking for Aiden to ask him about Helen, who's been reported missing. While looking around the property, the cops find something suspicious in the yard. As the couple watches, they inspect the grave, and to Liz's relief, all they unearth is the dog's severed paw. Months later, the woman takes a picture of Aiden and the baby. The man wonders how they could have given birth to a red-headed child, and Liz reasons it might be a recessive trait. However, she knows that the baby is actually Dan's, confirming that the two had an affair behind her sister's back.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.